there, and thanks for staying in with me. The novelist Mary Wesley spent many years of her early life writing, but only found real recognition recently in her 70s. I went down to Mary Wesley's home in Devon to renew my acquaintance with her. Come and meet her with me. Well, forgive this first boring question, because you've been asked it 100 times, I should think. Why did you take so long before you decided to write novels? I know you'd written children's books before.
I had written novels before, but I had destroyed them because they weren't good enough.
According to yourself?
According to me, yes.
But perhaps they were just as good.
No, I don't think so. I wasn't satisfied, and also I had no confidence. As I've often said, I thought I was under the misapprehension you had to be educated like Margaret Drabble to have been to Oxford, read English and all that, and I hadn't. And I used to write for my own entertainment. But I was, I suppose, developing my own style during that time. And also I'm very lazy. And when I was married, I had children, house full of people, and no privacy to write in. And sometimes I'd get the urge to write. I remember pretending to be ill several times and going to bed and writing in bed.
Like Elizabeth Barrett Brown.
And when I was young, in the war, or younger, I used to go to bed because it was so cold in the country in the war, and I used to take my write all night.
Secretly? So you really, it didn't obviously come up to your standard then?
No, I didn't. I wasn't good. And I wanted to be a writer when I was quite young, and it sort of came, and the desire sort of came and went in waves. And then eventually I wrote some children's books, and Antonia White saw what I'd been writing, and those got published before Eric died. He thought I could write. And after he died, people said, oh, you're starting to get published, go on. And I blocked totally for, I don't know, 5 years, I think. And I wrote Jumping the Queue, and before that a children's book. And I found it was a sort of way of life. I was very unhappy, but I had the consolation of my invention, what I was inventing. And then both my children's book, which was Haphazard House, and my first novel were refused by quite a number of publishers. And it wasn't until Macmillan accepted my novel that I realized perhaps I could write after all.
When Eric died, you were so unhappy that it was almost finding something else to fill your life that you're
I don't know at all. I think when I wrote, I was very low, very unhappy indeed. And when I wrote Jumping the Queue, I realized afterwards I'd sort of purged myself of that trauma of despair, because it is about a woman who's in despair and grief. And I didn't realize it at the time what I was doing. Quite likely that was unconscious. But the confidence came, or began to come. I still haven't got very much. When I got, my editor said that was good, and what was I doing now? And I said, Come My Lawn, and then he was when I'd written that, he was very enthusiastic. And he's always having to build up my confidence. Your baby coming out, you know what it's like. Suddenly a lot of strangers are going to read it. And what is worse is the critics are going to read it. And certainly, a lot of critics wait for people to have a nice few good reviews, and then the moment comes when they said, well, now it's time we put this person down. They give you a bad review.
What do you think of comeuppance?
Yes, comeuppance, yes. Don't let her or he get too confident.
I've got the same core inside me that you're talking about, because if somebody calls me a good interviewer, I think, yes, but I'm ugly, or they're only saying that because they want to back a woman up, or all excuses, except the reason why they might be saying it, that you are a good novelist.
I don't know. I think a great number of people who appear confident. I mean, I've spent a large part of my life growing a sort of confident aspect, so that I look confident. It's like animals who are able to bristle, look fierce. You have to have this armour, this carapace of looking confident to protect this snail inside you. It's painful.
You know the fact that you didn't write your first book till you were 70. Irene Handel didn't write a book until she was 72. And she said that what she was filled with glee about was thinking that just at the time when people thought, there was nothing new going to happen for her, in fact, that things were going to possibly even diminish, it just goes up, it just went up. Suddenly she surprised them with a new novel rather than a new comic part.
Yes, that's true. I mean, instead of sort of sinking into old age, I've got a new life and don't think about it. People keep telling me how old I am, but I don't really think about it.
Have you ever been particularly interested in what age you were then?
No, never. Never cared two hoots.
Which is why I think you can take it now.
I think I'm more aware of death being much closer than it used to be, that certainly. But I don't think about that all too much either. Except that I feel that I shouldn't waste time.
You see, I suppose it really is fascinating that it happened to you at 70 plus. Because what would you have done if you hadn't written?
You mean if I hadn't got published?
Yes.
I would have gone on writing.
Correct.
I would not have retired then. It would have been people would have thought I've retired. When they reach a certain age, think it's time to retire. But I think creative people never do retire. They go on till they die. And a lot of people think, oh, my life's over, my children are out in the world, I shall sink back into doing good works and gardening and
a few hobbies.
And it's such waste of talent, because so many people just collapse in front of the television and stop doing anything. I think more people are latching on now to the fact that life doesn't stop at 75 or 80 or whatever.
Or even after retirement.
And I'm very, very lucky. I can see, I can hear, I've got my own teeth, I'm quite active. And so I don't have to bother very much about age and ill health and so on. And unless people, as I say, remind me of it, I don't think about it. But if you've got something to do, like living a double life, which is what it amounts to when you're a writer, then I see no end to it.
You can't run out of material, because you've lived for 70-odd years.
Well, the material's there, except that, I mean, I can only write about what I know, which is really relatively narrow. I can only write about what I think I know and the kind of people I think I know or have watched.
The moon!
Wait. Another toast. To absent friends.
Absent friends. Now for the terror run. Bags, I go first.
Me next. Will you time us, Uncle Richard?
Got your torch?
Yes.
Same rules, I take it. Flash the torch when you start.
Yes.
Off you go then.
Come on, twins.
Where's the finish?
Below us, out of sight. They shout when they reach it. I time them, and my word is final.
Look, Oliver's starting.
Oliver! Calypso! Twins! Sophie! Holly! Walter!
Come on, Sophie, run! Faster!
I have had letters, quite a lot of letters about the wartime books that come my lawn who've said, my mother tells me it was just like that, or, you've got it spot on. Which is lovely, because that's it. We were talking about this earlier, that it was the atmosphere I wanted to express, be able to do that. I think perhaps my favourite book is, I'm not sure, I think is The Camomile Lawn, because it represents a period of my life which I really felt very strongly. Not that I haven't had other periods of my life.
Did you have to, I don't think you did, but pluck up courage to write about sex?
No.
No.
Sex is normal.
Yes.
I mean, it's normal, abnormal not to have it, so it is part of life. It's part of music, painting, literature, everyday life, part of everything. So it has to be included.
I used to always remember thinking that I couldn't write about it when I was young because my mother would read it and know what I was up to.
Yes,
she wouldn't believe I was writing
that's a great
fiction.
damper. She wouldn't have liked to know you knew what she knew. Or
That's right.
didn't know, or to find out you knew a great deal more than she did.
That's right,
Yes.
which is even more galling. Yes.
I tell you what, Ollie. Even if I won't marry you, I'll sleep with you. Have you ever done it?
Yes?
Is it nice?
Nice. Nice. I want to have you to myself. I'll wait.
If there's a war, I'll sleep with you before you get killed. That's what maidens do in books, and I'm a maiden.
How you do carry on about your virginity. Virginity's nothing. You can lose it riding a bicycle.
I never knew that. I must be careful. I'm going to get a bicycle in London. Pa says petrol will be rationed.
And virginity not.
RAC, how can we help you?
Where's this shelter you built for Polly?
That's a surprise.
Come on. A bit further yet.
I can smell paint.
We had a bit of a rush to finish before you came home.
Now.
We wanted you to sleep in peace.
Even through air raids.
What do you think?
Mary, in the Chamomile Lawn, you said that that the war, that was a time when we all lived intensely. We did things we would never have done otherwise. It was a very happy time. Is that your view?
Well, it was happy. It was both happy and unhappy, but in an exaggerated form. Everybody's. I wrote that book because I wanted to try and put on paper, put into a book, the atmosphere as I knew it then. It happened to people like me and to a whole lot of people I knew. And it was a very strange atmosphere, which if you haven't lived through it, it's almost impossible to explain. There was a great deal of fear and a great deal of frivolity, which led to happiness, because people had parties. Everything was an excuse for a party, because you might never have a party again. And I don't know, there was a lot of happiness, I think, because we snatched at it. And there was also, we wanted to stave off despair. I mean, I know several occasions when there were people at parties I was at whom I never saw again. They were probably killed next day, especially people who were fighter pilots and people of that kind. They'd be there and absolutely normal and having a great time, and then next day they'd be shot down and killed and disappear. And that somehow or other led to a feeling of you didn't care what you did, you must do it, because you might never have another opportunity to do it. We all snatched at what pleasures we could find. To stave, in a way, to stave off one's fear and grief and anxiety. And there were, of course, long, long stretches of terrible boredom.
I wondered what it's like, except, I mean, it must be thrilling, to be suddenly your book to be taken, the Chamomile Lawn, to be taken and made into, what, 4 or 5 installments for the telly?
5.
When you've got somebody like, for instance, Calypso, you've got her very clearly set up in my mind. Do you not find that if you've fleshed her out so well yourself, you can't bear to see an interpretation of it?
That's true, because I based Calypso's appearance on somebody I knew when I was very young.
Exactly,
who was a very lovely girl who I didn't know very well, but she was strikingly beautiful. And I remember my mother saying, "Oh, what a beautiful girl." And I was a very small child when I first saw her. And she had sort of Grecian good looks. And I based her on that. She was in no way like Calypso's character, as far as I know. That she became quite a girlfriend of my brother's later on. He was much older than me. But Calypso is, I suppose, you say, well, she based on me. She's not based on me, but there's a bit of me in every woman through all the books. Must be, otherwise how could one write about it?
Yes.
Well, you know what Calypso always said, didn't you, Walter?
What's that?
She's married a rich man.
Well, somebody's got to pay for all this. Her parents haven't got a penny.
I should think Uncle John is jolly grateful. Oh, look, there's Oliver. I never thought he'd come.
Darling Ollie, how prickly you are.
Is that him?
It mustn't be horrible.
Am I still to get my comforts?
That?
I may claim them soon. I'm hoping to get to Finland.
Well, Hector says that's all collapsing.
There'll be other campaigns.
Why be in such a hurry?
Because I am. So you better buck up, too.
Hector!
Hello, old sod.
Hello, Oliver. Come over here, see Polly and the twins.
Leave me to the booze. I want to get filthy drunk.
You know, when you're writing about a book, you are keeping company with these people, almost more so than you're keeping company with the live people in your daily life, aren't you?
Very much so. They become a group of people one becomes very fond of, and at the end of the book, it's terribly sad to leave them. That's why in some of my books I've brought 1 or 2 characters back in again.
Calypso comes back into your new one, Dubious Legacy.
Yes, in Dubious Legacy, she's about 35, 36. She's grown up, married to Hector, has a child. And in another book, it's Poppy Grew, I think, she's an old woman. But I grew very fond of her. And in Not That Sort of Girl, I had a pair of twins who were totally odious, and I so liked them. It's lovely inventing really nasty people. I had to bring them back, and they come back in Second Fiddle as much more important characters.
You've got no aspirations of becoming a scriptwriter yourself of one of your books?
No. That would entail writing films. Robert Bolt asked me once, he said, "Why don't you write plays? Because your dialogue's very good." I said, I couldn't cope with the timing. You know, the Act 1's got to be so long, Act 2, so on, I couldn't do it. He laughed, because he is the best script writer. He laughed and said, "Oh, you just fill in with music, darling," which is rubbish. But I couldn't do that, because when I write a book, if I've said something and the chapter's very short, that's it. Because it wouldn't do for a film, for a scene.
What has the success of your novel done for you, though?
It's amazed me to start with, and to go on with it's made me quite a lot of friends. And amuses me quite a lot, too, because I've become more interesting to other people. Well, it's the same old me inside. I mean, I haven't changed.
No, but you have exposed yourself.
Yes, I'm afraid so, yes. I have several times people say to me, "Are you Mary Wesley?" And I say, "No, I'm Mary Seepman." Or confess that I am Mary Wesley. And it's quite strange to be somebody who is interesting to other people. Very odd.
You must be relishing it, though, on the quiet, if not on the...
Well, both ways. I mean, of course I'm pleased. Delighted that the books are being published, that they do sell. And it's lovely to be making some money. Lovely to be making some money and to stop having money worries, which I used to have. But again, we've lost something. We've lost privacy and a certain amount. I have to guard my solitude, very carefully.
Which you want?
It's quite difficult sometimes to guard it and not give offence. It's a sort of balancing act. I mean, you must know, you've got your book out now, and everybody wants to talk about your book and how you feel about it. And are you going to write another? Please do.
I know, but I'm saying, like you always think in despair that you're not going to pull it off, don't you?
Yes, I always feel I'll never write another book, or it won't be any good.
I wonder what it is that made you feel quite so unconfident, because you certainly had a happy life with Eric.
I wasn't a confident child. I wasn't ever a confident person, only in sort of bits.
Do you feel you were loved as a child?
No. Not my grandmother loved me. My nanny loved me. I was a great disappointment to my mother. I was loved by various men. I was loved by my husband. I belong to a generation when people didn't say, "Oh, darling, you look lovely in that frock." And I would give it, it was a pity you didn't flatter girls, because in case they got conceited. And I thought I was very plain. I had a pretty elder sister. And I didn't realise I had any looks at all until it was almost too late to give me confidence. I don't think people realise how unconfident young people are.
Neither do I. But I think that a lot of people, if they don't get the love of this parent, it becomes important. If there isn't love from a parent, or it's sufficient, I think you always look for it. And unless you get it replaced, I think you're still unconfident.
I think even if you do, I notice people who've have a very good relationship with their parents have got confidence, whatever happens. Well, I didn't.
Yeah.
That's what it amounts to. So that I've never had that confidence I might have had as a child.
Sophie, you were listening.
Yes?
You shouldn't do that.
I happen to be here. I often am.
You'd never talk about your next book until you've written it.
Not to anyone.
Is that a kind of almost superstition on your part, that you talk it out of your system?
It's like losing something to talk about it until it's finished. And it's also more for so undeveloped that I can't develop a theme by talking about it. A lot of people can. A lot of writers can discuss what they're writing with other writers. I can't. I can't. It's bad enough trying to remember my own ideas without talking about them to other people. I make notes all the time in case I should lose things.
When people write to you, which I know they do, and ask you how do they get on with their novels, how can they get on with their novels? I bet they do, don't they? Ask you how.
There's only one thing to say, which is that you've got to develop your own voice, your own style. And there's no way to do it except by hard work. Because a lot of people say, are you influenced by so-and-so or so-and-so? No, I'm not. Writers are not influenced unless deliberately on the... I certainly am not. I've read such a cross-section of writers all my life. I've had to develop my own style.
From someone whose talent gained delayed recognition, we move next week to someone for whom acclaim came early, in childhood. I'll be the guest of Yehudi Menouin, whose precocious musical gift shot him to the starry heights where he's since remained. Join me then, same time, same place. Till then, goodbye.
Now on 4, in the last interview of the series, Sir Yehudi Menuhin, in with Mavis.
Hello again, and welcome to the last programme in the series. Some time ago, I went along to meet the violinist and conductor Yehudi Menuhin. Public figures have a public life, but they really belong, like all of us, to their background, their family, and their home. I spoke to him, to his wife, his daughter, and his grandson in their family setting. Join me now in their company. It doesn't appear to me that the fact that you are a genius has weighed very heavily on you.
Well, I'm not a genius, that's why.
You were a boy genius?
Not even, no. Really? I was just an ordinary child of very good parents, that's all.
At 7 years of age, you were able to play brilliantly in a way that other people...
There are many children who do that today. It always irritated me when I was a boy already to be called a prodigy. I felt it was misapplied and had nothing to do with the fact that I thought I was perfectly normal, and everybody tried to turn me into some abnormal monster. I still think I was normal. I was very fortunate, that's why.
You're fortunate in what way?
I was fortunate to have the right kind of environment, and parents and teachers and friends, and I've been fortunate in that all my life, not least with my wife and with my children and my grandchildren. I've always been surrounded by wonderful people.
Tell me this then, what was the moment for you of discovering something in your fingers that was going to produce music?
I always wanted to be a musician, and I owe the violin whatever not all, but certainly a great part of what I'm enjoying today. I owe that to music and to what music brings. And to that extent, you're quite right in stressing the importance of those early ideals, those aims, those dreams that I had. And I could have never dreamt of anything more fulfilling than the present moment with my wife and children, grandchildren. I think this is the crowning moment of my life. Yes.
Therefore, you would have to assume you came from a very happy family yourself, that
Absolutely.
The family delights you so much.
Very, very devoted, very loving, very caring, and very... Today, they would be called self-sacrificing. But I don't know that in the good days of parental obligations, they even thought of it as such. They probably thought it was perfectly natural. Today, parents whose every breath and every moment of the day and the night is concerned with the well-being of their children, it's almost unheard of. In fact, in my own experience, it would have been very difficult to emulate my parents. I had to travel. I couldn't be with the children as my parents were. And my wife had to bear the burden of both halves of lives and sew them together, knit them together somehow, both children and mine, which she's done remarkably. There is something to be said for the addition of remarkable people who bring in a new element, a new approach to life to the children.
these some special ones?
Yeah, that's special.
What's that? I know that is, don't I?
Yes. It's my grandfather at my father's 50th birthday.
Oh, nice. Do you think that Yehudi is a very good grandfather?
Oh, he's adorable. You know, a grandfather has to do so little. He just has to be a benevolent presence. Because he really has a kind of benevolence about him, you know, that nobody ever minds. He's always forgiven everything. Well, there's so little to forgive. But I mean, such breaches as that.
When you were being busy with his work, did you then find it very difficult to know how to cope with your family? Which is every woman's problem, more women's than men's.
Yes, well, to start with, I did all my pregnancies on tour and dropped the child wherever the violin was on the 9th month. So one was born in San Francisco, no, one was born in Edinburgh, the first one at the festival, and the other two in San Francisco, and I lost a few on the way. But, so it was always a problem. It was always a problem of, first of all, never looking as if I were asking him to pay for being separated from the children, because I wouldn't have done at all. And the second time, you know, not letting them, second way, should I say, not letting them feel that they weren't as important as their father. It was very difficult when they were young, really difficult. So I used to come back from these tens of thousands of miles touring all over South America, you know, 26 towns in 6 weeks, and never put my boots up, never. Go out for walks with them, swim with them, read to them, which was lovely. And I'm always afraid that, alas, it wasn't quite enough.
If you were going to be beginning a book and you were going to write about your father, how would you describe him when you were young? Try to obliterate what you know about him now.
Well, I thought my father was the most, I suppose like all little girls, I thought my father was the best looking, most marvellous man that ever was. I mean, for me, he was a prince. He really was. And a very, very kind man.
Could you talk to him? Could you tell him things? If they were worrying you, could you talk about them? I mean, you did come from quite a disturbed early part of your life, didn't you? Was he understanding? Could you talk to him about that, or was that too difficult?
It was very difficult for me to talk about it. I think if I could have talked about it, he could have certainly listened, but it was probably difficult for me. I think probably I spoke more to my stepmother about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you see anything in your father that you've used as a parent yourself towards your children?
I think the inspiration that my father has been to me has inspired me to be a parent. But my whole setup is so totally different. And what I want and what I can give is also so different, and what I can't give is different, so that you can't compare the way I have brought up my children to the way he brought us up. And also I think, Mavis, that nowadays what is demanded of parents is totally different.
But do you think that your father and stepmother possibly missed out a little bit on that? By having the career thrust on him, your father?
I don't think one can...
No,
I don't think one can say that. I don't think... My father, I don't think, has missed out, because he's done so many important and wonderful things. I think, dare I say it, women have a different need, obviously. And I think perhaps, if I'm not putting words into my stepmother's mouth, she has made sacrifices, certainly, in that way. That I also probably, well, anybody married to somebody like my father would have had to have made.
Do you think that in the amount of time you had for your children, which was not as much as you wanted, do you think, however, that you based your idea of yourself as a father on your father, or do you think your fathering was like your mother's mothering?
First of all, every life is different, every generation is different, every occupation is different. I could no more have based my approach to my children on my father's example because my life was so totally different. However, I think that there are certain moral precepts that, like my wife brought to the family, Diana, and these come from all parts of the family. A very high sense of obligation to society, to humanity, to the future, to the world at large. And I'm nothing if I'm not a citizen of the world, really.
How have you found the transition from fatherhood to grandfatherhood?
Oh, I love it. I love it. First of all, it's a different kind of... it's irresponsible responsibility.
It's wonderful, I know.
It's responsibility which is not directly responsible, and yet it is responsible. And therefore, it's like graduating from manual work to directorship, you know? It's the same kind of evolution from...
I said from love to a love affair, but I don't know if that's quite the same thing.
Well, instead of wielding the spade, you sort of wield the pen. It's an evolution from direct concern, and of course the danger of receiving direct criticism too, to a much more sheltered and privileged position when you only receive warmth because no one holds you responsible. You see. It's a lovely condition.
But you were a busy father yourself, but I bet you managed, didn't you, to find time? Because it's the quality of the time you give your children, not the amount of time you give them, I think.
I have to tell that to myself continually to reassure myself on that score.
Right.
But certainly the quality was there. The quantity would have left much to be desired, but the quality was there, and it was always very beautifully prepared by my wife. In other words, I was held in the children's estimation to be sort of valuable, rather priceless treasure that appears from time to time, you know. Nothing to be taken for granted, and something to be looked up to as really rather special.
Malaysia Airlines flies daily non-stop from Heathrow to Malaysia with over 300 weekly connections to the Far East. Malaysia Airlines, enchantment wherever you fly.
Now at Britain's biggest furniture sale, massive discounts on Schreiber kitchens and bedrooms, plus big savings on so much more. The MFI sale on now.
You may be looking for a car that's small and practical. But you still want a car that feels luxurious. Well, now you've found it, because while the Clio is certainly small, it's perfectly formed. Papa? The Renault Clio.
One thing has been said was that you were terribly, terribly protected and that you had never even crossed the main road on your own.
I was, and yet you have to balance that. You see, every statement that's made is made by an outsider.
Yes.
Judging from their own point of view. Their children go to schools, I didn't go to school. Well, that means protected. Their children go out alone because they have to on the streets and so on. I didn't have to go out alone, so I was protected. However, when you think of the amount of adventure in my life, I mean, the sheer amount of travel for a boy of 8 and 9 and 10 to go to these different countries, to dwell in strange places, to meet gypsies at the age of 11 and hear them, to go out walking at night in the forests of Romania. I mean, and meet every kind of person, come to England and discover a new civilization, which I fell in love with. These are incredible adventures for a boy. If you ask any boy, give them a choice of these adventures or going to school every day, I don't doubt that they would choose my life.
I'm going to stop feeling sorry for you, because by reading some of your cuttings, I started to feel sorry that you'd lost your childhood. You'd gained another one, you're saying. You'd gained a rather rich and rather exciting one then.
Exactly. And furthermore, if you ask my wife to tell you honestly, to speak about me, she'll say that I've never grown out of my childhood. In fact, I think life has a curious way. You get older for a time, and then you get younger.
I'm glad to hear it.
Well, it's very reassuring, I can tell you. It's a marvellous, marvellous period of one's life.
So have I detected in that a little that your sense of wanting to take on adventure is perhaps a bit of a secret of your very elegant old age?
Perhaps. I mean, it certainly is that I had a good preparation for it, in that my life was so very ordered and so very purposeful and so very fruitful that I'm still well enough, young enough, and to relish the joy of new sensations.
How do you think it's influenced you as a young chap, having such a very big figure in your grandfather, internationally known?
If anything, it's just made me feel much more confident. I mean, his confidence is exuded onto us. I mean, he has encouraged, for instance, I started studying Chinese when I was in my mid-teens.
Your father was Chinese?
Is Chinese, yes.
Is Chinese,
yes.
sorry, yeah.
But since I've lived with my mother most of my life, I did until fairly recently, I only really spoke Chinese when I was at school, when I started to learn it when I was about 14. And I always spoke English with my father. So, and it was my grandfather who really encouraged the pursuit of Chinese studies, which is quite odd because he comes from the Western, or more or less Western side of the family.
It's good that he's done that in a way, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
Why do you think he did encourage you? Did he feel you wanted to have a bond, a greater bond with your father, or what do you think it is?
Well, I think because he is such a world figure, he's grown to learn the importance of the knowledge that individuals should have of other people's and other people's cultures, and that it's important to build up that knowledge, especially if you're someone like me who's got a lot of mixture in him. It's important that to help towards your sort of personal balance, that you should be, you know, familiar and at ease with all sides of your culture.
Do you feel that part of that, of you wanting to give to other people, is almost like repaying for the gift you had, or?
Very much so. It is a kind of, at its lowest level, a kind of insurance payment, you know,
Yes.
because I've
Yes.
received so
So
much.
much.
I've been so lucky that the only way I can somehow feel I protected is by not abusing that luck, by not using it for, you know, purposes which would decrease its quality. And I feel somehow obliged to extend and to share what I've known, which is very precious and very special. And I do that simply, again, not out of obligation, not out of any kind of deliberate, conscious. If it's simply there, I'm perfectly myself. And I think music is a form of communication and a reciprocal relationship between the musician and his audience, between the musician and the composer, between the musician and his instrument.
But you see, that is where you as an artist and a person who can give me, the hearer, such wonderful music, it can't be reciprocal, because I can clap, I can listen to you, and I've received it, but I am in awe or in debt towards you, in a way, because I can't give it back to you. You've given me something.
You do. You'd be surprised how much the audience gives back. And after every, not only during the concert is one aware of it, but at the end of every concert, any number of people come back. They may have heard me as Soldiers and the Aleutians, or they may have heard me in other circumstances, or simply been grateful for the music they received. Innumerable instances. Now, of course, any number of young people who have grown in the last 10, 20 years into very successful, good musicians, or people I meet for the first time, as the young violinist who played with me last night, an excellent violinist. I found him to be so intelligent and sensitive, with a totally different attitude to most young violinists, in that he was given to assess the philosophy of the piece he was playing and of the composer, which was very refreshing to me. And of course I delighted in that, and we spoke about Beethoven, about Mozart, about Bartók and so on. Beethoven as the composer who is, he states, he pronounces. It's not a dialogue. Beethoven tells you what you should know. It's like the commandments, or like Shakespeare's statements that are truth, pure truth. And you can't reduce them. It's like an axiom. You can't take out one word. It's there. It can't be reduced. It's absolute. Mozart's is a dialogue. It's totally different. It's talking to each other, and with gesture and music. Every composer is a different personage, and you have to interpret them each in a different way. And I think that's a very good lesson in life too, because every person is a different person, and you cannot treat them all as if they were the same. However, you can give them good things like music, or bad things like drugs, and because we are all susceptible to evil and to good.
This is the end, my friend, the end of the current series. I've enjoyed sharing these programmes with you, and thank you for keeping me company. I'll be seeing you later in the year. Till then, good night and goodbye.
Yo.